All right, so this is not a tech programming or AI news video like the ones I often make. In this video, I'll go through 7 quick tips for using IntelliJ, a tool that I use a lot. And I think that if you spend a lot of time with any given tool, it's worth learning a few tips and tricks and shortcuts to make your life easier and make you more productive. So let's not delay any longer and get straight into it. All right, so the first one is perhaps the most simple, which is just Control T, and it's different if you're on a Windows machine. So just keep an eye out for these shortcut notifications here. But this just pops up the refactor context menu. Now, the reason why I find this to be one of the most useful shortcuts in all of IntelliJ is because I spend a lot of time refactoring things. I can't remember all the different refactoring shortcuts, but if I just use Control T on a Mac or Control Alt Shift T on a Windows machine, I can immediately just select using my arrow keys whichever particular refactoring that I want. So for refactoring, it's pretty much the only shortcut that I try to remember. By the way, before we get into the next tips, I'm Saeed, the Codogrammer, and if you don't want to be the last to know about important tech, programming, AI, and business news, be sure to hit subscribe. All right, so the next tip is also about shortcuts. So again, some of the key shortcuts, the ones that you're most likely to use most often, can be quite tricky to remember. So one of the things that might help with that is you can go over to Help and say Keyboard Shortcuts PDF, and it will generate a Keyboard Shortcuts PDF for you. A couple of things to know are these are the main keyboard shortcuts. There's a much longer list of keyboard shortcuts which you can get to from the key map, which I'll just show you now. So if you just go over to IntelliJ settings and type key map, you can see them all here. Okay, so this is just a basic list. Also, this is a set of default keyboard shortcuts. That means if you add new shortcuts or you modify some of this, so if you happen to change that from being Control Space to Control Shift Space, this wouldn't actually update. It's not going to generate a brand new PDF with that new shortcut. So this is just the key default basic shortcuts, okay? But I still find that this is quite handy. If you've got a second monitor, you can keep it open there if you're doing a lot of editing, or you can actually print this out. All right, so the next tip is very simple. Often you're working in the editor here and you need to get over to the project window here. So you can simply do that by clicking Command 1, and you can see that immediately that section is highlighted. And then if you move your mouse, you're moving down that hierarchy. And if you want to get to your bookmarks window here, you can say Command 2. And if at any point you want to get back to your editor, you just hit Escape, okay? So Command 1 to get to the project window, Command 2 to get to the next window, and Escape to get back to the editor pane. Again, very simple, very quick, but it does make your coding experience a lot more fluid. By the way, you probably noticed that I'm using the old UI, not the new one. I do switch it occasionally, but find myself switching back just because I'm more familiar. I'd be interested to know, are you using the new UI, or are you struggling to get used to it like I am and keep finding yourself switching back to the old one? Let me know in the comments below. I am planning to switch over pretty much to the new UI at some point and just force myself to get used to it. Okay, so our next tip is also related to the project window. So I'm going to hit Command 1 and get back to the project window. Now, I showed you earlier how to get to the project window by just clicking Command 1. Now, whilst you're there, remember that you can actually just type straight away. You don't need to click any shortcuts. There is a shortcut for it, but you don't actually need to do it. You can just start typing when your focus is on the project window. So if I click Escape and press Escape again, I'm back in the editor focus. But if I click Command 1 again, I'm back there, and without clicking anything else, I can just start typing, okay? And you can kind of drill down. If I can search for weird, you can see that that comes up. I can just type function down, and then type 50, for example, and it just filters down into those files. So it becomes very easy to find what you're looking for without having to click too many shortcuts, okay? And escape again, and we're back into the editor pane. All right, so the next tip is about kind of finding your way around the IDE. So you can click Command E on Mac, and you can very easily find recently edited files. You can click Command E again, and it will show you just the ones that you've edited, okay, which is this checkbox here. And I find that this is a lot easier than rooting around tabs that might be open for files that I've been recently editing, okay? You can also find recent operations. You can also find other kind of windows and tabs that you can get access to from here. So for example, if you just start typing, again, without any further shortcuts, you can filter that down. If you want to search for, if you want to search for main, you can see that. If I search for con, again, you can see that it's searching the windows on the left and the recent files on the right. So just to recap, Command E to launch that window, Command E again to filter down to actually files that you've edited, and functional windows on the left and recently accessed files on the right. Okay, that's that. Now the next tip is another shortcut, but the final tip is to do with debugging streams, which I'll go through in a second. All right, so often you might be used to clicking Command-Shift-A to get the most recent action, but sometimes it's quite hard to remember the specific tab. So the simplest one to find things, in my opinion, is just Shift-Shift. Now, if you click Shift-Shift, you end up at the All tab, which is a bit like Command-E because you're seeing recently accessed files, but you can just tab from there to search for whatever it is that you're looking for, whether it's classes, files, or actions, etc. And from here, you can search for pretty much any action that you might need. So instead of remembering the shortcuts, you can press Shift, tab to actions, and then just look for whatever it is that you're looking for, okay? But if you want to get straight to actions, it's Command-Shift-A, but personally, I find it easier to just remember Shift, and then tab to where I'm going, and then just type and filter for what I need. And remember, many of the settings you can actually toggle from here, so you don't actually need to go into that setting window. All right, so the next tip is about debugging streams. Now, this is something I wasn't aware that existed until recently, so I thought I'd include this because I thought it was pretty cool. All right, so this is just a very simple stream pipeline where we've got a stream of a few fruit names. We're then just doing a bunch of operations where we're moving it to uppercase. This is commented out. I'll explain why shortly. We drop while the length is equal to 5. We filter whether they contain the letter A. We move them to uppercase. Then we check that it happens to be Apple, so very strict filtering, and then we just print them out. Okay, so I'm just going to debug that and we'll see what that looks like. So because this is a pipeline, we don't get a handle on each of the values as they're coming out, so we can inspect them and see which particular operation may have affected the result that we're getting. It can be quite difficult sometimes to see exactly where something has happened. So let's hit debug. Now I notice sometimes there's a slight delay for this to appear, but you can see this operation here, which says trace current stream chain. Now if I click onto that and we give it a second to load, you can see here we've got all of our input fruits, okay? And then you can see that we've got a map operation there. You can see what that does. It takes them from left to right, okay? Then we can see a drop while, and the drop while is saying drop while the fruit length is equal to 5. So apple gets dropped. And then we can see a filter operation. Fruit contains A. At this point, our filter isn't maybe doing what we wanted. We expected it to print a few fruits, but it doesn't because the A has been filtered out. And remember, A is lowercase, okay? And these are all uppercase, so we lose everything there. And then we see that there's nothing to map, there's nothing to filter, and there's nothing to print, okay? So that tells us that our filter in this case was too strict, and maybe that should be uppercase A or whatever the business requirements are. Now, I find that this kind of left to right mapping, it can be quite useful if you've got a lot of data items and you're losing some of them or they're not looking quite how you expect them to. So this can be quite a nice way of inspecting that code. Another thing you can do is click flat mode and you can see as the operation proceeds what happens to the data. The slight issue is you might need to resize some of these windows or scroll to the right if it's a string because you get the object representation on the left. Now, something interesting to note is that if I enable this take while operation, and I just stop that and start it again, I noticed a bit of what potentially looks like a bug. Let's just pop this trace current stream chain window open again, and let's go to split mode. Now, if you look here, even at the first operation when we've created the stream, it's only showing 2 elements, right? Now, I expected those 2 elements to only be whittled down once we get to the take while operation. And when we go to the map operation, we can see that it's mapped those. And when we go to take while, we can see that it's whittled that down to Apple, okay, which is correct. That's what I expected the take while to do. But as soon as we included the take while into the stream pipeline, the initial representation also goes to apple and banana instead of apple, banana, cherry, date, fig, and grape, okay? So I don't know if that's a bug or something that I'm missing about how take while works, but that's just, just something to be aware of. If you've got a take while operation, you might want to be careful. Okay, let me know in the comments below if you think I've missed something. I'll just terminate that. All right, so that pretty much wraps up our IntelliJ tips and tricks. If you'd like to know more about how IntelliJ works and some of the more obscure features, let me know in the comments below if you'd like me to make some more videos on that. But regarding this video, I am interested to know, did you find any of these useful or did you already know all of them? And also drop in the comments below if you have any other particularly useful tips and shortcuts for IntelliJ, because it might help other people getting to know the IDE. So thank you for watching and see you in the next one.